Recently, the argument has started up again, and there's been a lot of videos, including by some close friends, about whether it is a moral imperative to go see horror films when they come out in theaters. I have complex feelings on this issue, and a lot of those are going to have to do with my specific experiences. And to be clear, I've had the same bad experience as all of you have, maybe worse. I've seen midnight movies with crowds that won't shut up. I've seen primetime releases on opening weekend where children ran rampant through the theater. I remember laser pointers decorating the screen, and I remember phone calls being made in the seat next to me during the film. And yet, I still love the theatrical experience, and I don't ever want it to go away. When it comes to the horror genre in particular, there's an additional wrinkle because in the 1990s, after a string of very high-profile failures, the genre really went into decline as far as theatrical horror went, and most studios focused what money they were willing to put into the genre on direct-to-video releases. And in some ways, this was a good thing in that it reset the genre. But it was a painful few years, and we lost the better part of half a decade to extremely slim pickings at the movie theater. For some who've grown up after this period, you might not have a memory of it, or it might seem absurd to think that it would reoccur. But it isn't absurd, and it is a real component to this conversation. A film like Dr. Sleep, which was fairly expensive to make and ultimately didn't do very well at the theater, causes executives to give pause before they either give the resources or give the green light at all to a movie in the genre. The genre has always existed in this kind of twilight, whereas it's not really reputable for the studios, but they love the results. And certainly studios like Blumhouse and the Corman factory before them always had the right idea that the horror genre does not need to be an expensive genre, and that word of mouth goes further. So you spend a reasonable amount on advertising and get a big result. But don't make the mistake of thinking that Hollywood has some kind of deep-rooted interest in the genre. They don't. They like the paycheck. And we've seen ups and downs consistently through the entire history of film when it comes to the horror movie. They love the paycheck. They don't particularly love the product. Paramount released 8 Friday the 13th films in the 80s. They didn't want to make one of them. The reality is we have to look at the genre as always on a precarious balance. Some have framed the argument that we're suggesting that by saying that we should support theatrical horror, that means we should support all theatrical horror, even if you know it's a bad film. And that's not something I would ever do, although I'm sure some people are out there making that argument. The thing is, there needs to be some sense that if you put out a good product, you can expect a good return. If we're so gun-shy about going to the theaters that movies are not greenlit for theaters, there's going to be a rundown effect. I think it's important to realize, too, that when a film is greenlit for direct-to-video, or modernly direct-to-stream, it has certain limitations placed on it as far as the personnel that can be hired, and the time that can be spent, and the money that can be put to the project. And while I do think that the horror genre does not need large budgets, and that sometimes it becomes an advantage to have to work with what you have rather than if you had money to do anything, there's something to be said, too, for the fact that time and personnel, and yes, even money, are hard to replace when you're under the gun to make a project. A lot of the more challenging projects that are coming out today wouldn't be made if they cost even 10% more. I think there is a danger if the horror genre becomes a genre that is all direct to streaming and doesn't have a theatrical presence, that the budgets and the talent that's willing to work in that environment will naturally respond. I think we have to be careful here. I'm not saying to support bad film. That's ludicrous. That only increases the amount of bad film that will be released. And that has nothing to do with the horror genre particularly. It's just once something does really well, you get more of it. So I guess my biggest point is, when something comes out that interests you, don't wait the 3 months. Go to the theater and see it. Support the good stuff. If something has wildly great reviews, or if people that you really trust say that, hey, this is a film that you're going to love, go to the theater. I understand the cost is prohibitive, but I belong to a major cinema chain's club, And for $22 a month, I get to see as many movies as I'd like. And this has allowed me to take some of the hesitation to go see films that I don't think are necessarily going to be great out of the equation. On top of that, the plan, if you know how to use it properly, which I've only recently realized how to do, also gives me free drinks and popcorn every few visits. So at the end of the day, for $22 a month, I'd be a fool not to go see films in the genre. I guess that's my real suggestion to you is look in your local area, see what's actually available to take some of your concerns away. As far as the movie-going experience, yeah, certain times to go see movies are going to be better than others because of the crowds that will be attracted. But keep in mind this, too. The filmmakers didn't make the film thinking about your living room. They didn't think about it considering the phone calls that you'll get or the refrigerator making a strange sound that you need to go investigate or that the dog needs to be walked. When a filmmaker sets out to make a film, they imagine a darkened theater, and that's important because it does inform the creation of the art. If we lose that, and filmmakers start to make movies designed for your living room and the distractions of being at home and the conveniences of being at home, it's going to change film fundamentally. It already is changing film fundamentally. Keep in mind that the horror genre was greatly changed by the home video movement in the 80s. And we're seeing that again with the streaming movement, whereas movies are coming to streaming original. And you know, there's been some real gems. There really has. But if we're being honest, if you look through your streaming service right now and look at all the horror movies that are available, there is a flood of trash. So I'm just asking that you do the same thing for theaters that you do on your couch, which is, no, don't go to see something that you think is going to be bad, the same way you wouldn't click on a movie that you can tell is going to be bad. But when something is good that's available, something that helps the genre, that supports the business model that gave us great films in the past, I think we should support it. You need to understand that films like The Exorcist, Halloween, Friday the 13th, Candyman, the Blob remake, all those films that we love and hold close to our heart would not have been made, not in the form that we ultimately got, if they had been intended for a market other than theaters. Now, I am not a Pollyanna. I know that the physical media war is over and that's been lost, and the theatrical experience is probably forever changed. The fact that they think they have to serve you a 4-course meal in a recliner pretty much tells you that the business is not secure. Movies are not the draw they were because they are available in so many other places and so much more conveniently and often cheaper. But what we will lose is fundamentally what the movies have always been. Ultimately, I don't think this is a new argument, and it started long before I was around. When televisions first started coming into houses, theaters got really worried that they would replace the experience and no one would want to go to the theater. After all, back then you'd dress up, you'd socialize before the movie. It was a day out. It was a big event. It wasn't something you did just on the drop of a dime. If you could just watch a movie on your television in the middle of the day because it was raining outside, it diminished that experience. Well, it changed the experience, that's for sure. And probably some of those changes aren't for the best and other ones are extremely good. I mean, we wouldn't have gotten those great late 70s made-for-television horror films like Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, if in fact televisions had never made their way into our houses. So the genre in some ways was enhanced. In other ways, it was harmed. Same thing is really true today. Streaming plays an important role that the local video store used to play. As far as new releases go, I think it's a mixture of things. Are there films that deserve the theatrical experience? Certainly. So I think that we have to support all forms. And that includes physical media while we still have it. And that includes the theaters while we still have them. And it certainly includes streaming. Because honestly, traditional television won't be with us much longer. So if all this is taken as one thing, if I'm saying one thing at all here, and not just rambling for however long this video ends up being, what I will say is this. Support the genre. I'm not as concerned with how you support it, but be aware that it's not a zero-sum game. The decisions of the masses will inform the genre. It will inform what gets made, how it's made. And there'll be benefits, and there will be drawbacks. Yes, theaters won't play unrated films, and yet streaming will make Cannibal Holocaust available. I get it. I understand that there is benefits to one format. However, if the first time you see a great film like The Shining, it's not on the biggest possible screen, then you'll never really have experienced The Shining. So I want all options on deck and on table. And if you're hardcore into one way to watch a film and that's it, then you're probably not watching enough movies because you don't see the benefit. Anyway, I'd love to hear what you have to say. I think this is a good conversation in the community, which is kind of rare. Most of our conversations are not really productive. I think this one is. The important thing to remember is, if you love this, support it. How you support it? Tailor it to the movie. Tailor it to the experience. Tailor it to your conscience.